Whew, I became cynical at 4 years old out on a farm in Nichols, Iowa. My cousins first introduced me to this concept called wishing upon a shooting star. And they showed it to me and I said, I better take this responsibility serious. So I sat there that night and I thought long and hard about what I wanted to wish for. And then I silently made my wish. And it was this: I hope this house never burns down. Now, about a month after this, I'm a quarter mile down the road at the neighbor's farm and we're watching a goat get milked when my aunt's Chevy Blazer comes ripping across the gravel road. And she pops out of it and she's screaming, "Everybody in, let's go. The house is on fire." And by the time the fire trucks made it out there to the farm, the house was burnt toast. I'd never set foot in that house ever again. The exact opposite of my wish had come true. It was the first time that I felt gut punched by fate. And I didn't tell anybody about it for 13 years and I let it eat away at me as I descended into cynicism. 3 words would jolt me out of that later on. Then I'd go on a path of self-discovery that allowed me to come up with a ratio that saved my life and helped make me rich and successful. In this video, we're going to cover why you act against your own best interests, how to repattern the highways inside of your brain to give you new on-ramps and new off-ramps, and how to shift limiting conscious thought into unlimiting automatic action. First though, we must talk about the Johnny Appleseed of LSD. That's the name that author Michael Pollan uses in his book, How to Change Your Mind, to describe Al Hubbard. If you've heard of the phrase set and setting, this comes from Hubbard. In short, your mindset and the environment together can have a huge impact on how you ascribe meaning to any experience. That's why taking acid at midnight in a park at 14 years old to trip balls didn't produce any therapeutic benefits for me, unfortunately. However, when I had a certain creative writing teacher who I really respected give me an assignment in a classroom where I felt safe, I was able to finally write for the first time my experience wishing upon a star. And I concluded that writing nihilistically with this idea of this is why I became an atheist. And the teacher gave me an A for the paper, and then he wrote one little thing at the bottom of it, and it was prayers do not equal wishes. And those 2 words and that one unequal sign broke my limiting belief. It cracked the door open to allow me to eventually replace it with much more empowering ones. And once I fully understood this, and trust me, it took me years, then I also understood something that's really quirky about human nature, which is that we constantly act against our own self-interest. You know that 6th slice of pizza ain't gonna unlock nirvana for you, but there you go, open wide. Deep down, I knew that hating the world was only gonna make me feel lousy, but yet I did it anyway. What made the difference for me is when I no longer looked at thoughts as negative and positive, but instead as limiting versus empowering. The problem with thoughts is they create these feedback loops. So if you want to stop doom scrolling and then you fail, then you might say to yourself, well, I got no willpower. And now you feel bad about feeling bad. And to pick yourself up and make yourself feel better, guess what you do? You go back and you doom scroll some more. So labeling thoughts as negative is like trying to put out a fire with gasoline. The other problem with negative is you tend to generalize it. If I try something bad and I fail, well then that's bad, so therefore, why try? A better question is this: when is the behavior limiting versus when is it empowering? So he who hesitates is lost, they say. But I want you to hesitate every single time you consider putting somebody else down. See, hesitation can be limiting or it can be empowering depending upon the set and the setting. The early bird gets the worm, they say, but what about the early worm? It gets eaten. So being in the 5 a.m. club, it could be empowering for you or it could be limiting, depending upon what? The set and the setting. When I began to observe my thinking through the lens of when does this limit me and when does this empower me, it helped me remove the judgment, which then stopped the negative feedback loop, and it allowed me to consider far more empowering choices. Yet alone, that just isn't enough. I also needed a second step. Public speaking scares the hell out of most people. As soon as they think about giving a speech a mental picture pops up that's so overwhelming to them that they shut the whole thing down. And then they begin to avoid even thinking about the idea of publicly speaking, and they also start to minimize any situation where they could be called upon to speak. They like shrink down in their seat, and their world gets smaller and smaller. Now, I knew early in my career that public speaking was going to be one of the most powerful ways for me to make a ton of money. So while living with my dad in a tiny little apartment next to a pawn shop and a redneck bar called Hubbles, I was broke as a joke. Even then, I'd visualize speaking in front of large audiences. I would see the crowd, and I'd hone in on the smallest details, like what are the clothes that they're wearing? And I would even say, look at the wrinkles around their eyes. And then I'd hear the rustling of the papers that have my speaking notes on them. And I would hear the distant hum of the air conditioner just in the background of the room that I was speaking in. I'd go even as far as noticing the smell of the wood on the lectern that I was standing behind, and I could feel the fabric on my skin of the suit that I was wearing. So before I ever gave my first real big speech, I'd given 1,000 of them previously in my mind. It's real hard for your brain to discern between actual experience and imagined ones. In fact, your memories of the past are not some slideshows or home movies that you can pull out and watch again and again. Each time you remember a past event, the details slightly change because of your set and your setting. Since your past experiences, by the way, now can be altered when you think of them, what implication does that have on creating memories about a potential future? Here's a fun thing to try. I want you to think about a great decision that you made. You knew it was a great decision when you made it, and then time proved it so. Now, question to you. When you think of that decision, where is it? Here's what I mean. For some of you, you'll see the picture or the movie, and it'll be floating around in front of you just right here. And you can reach out and grab it. Or it might be over here, or it might be up here, or even down here. Now, some of you find you're immersed in the image like a first-person shooter game. And others of you can see yourself seeing yourself. And a few of you can't even make visual images. And that's okay. The question to you is, where do you first feel it? And where does that feeling move? What you might not be aware of is we encode experiences, real and imagined, and then rely on these shorthand cues to determine what actions we take. I want you to think about it. Thinking is hard. It takes time, it takes energy, it takes cognition. Who got time for that, right? Conditioning is easy. You just respond with whatever response you're conditioned to. So where you store your images and feelings are clues that can help you better tap into your intuition. So if I'm thinking about a hard choice that I have to make, instead of only examining the conscious decisions of the pros and the cons and doing SWOT analysis and all that junk, here's what I do. I say, when I think of this choice, where is it at locationally? Is it here next to where I've made every great decision? Or is it up here where I've made monumentally bad decisions? And so I think about the choice and say, oh, it's closer to here. And then I say, what if I did this instead? And now I look at it, oh, it's even closer. And now I know I'm on the right track. Here's where it gets real fun. I want you to think about a time you've acted in a way that has significantly limited you. And then I want you to explore 5 alternate responses that would have been empowering instead. So for my star wishing incident, here are 5 alternative empowering ways I could have responded. Number 1, I could have said, hey, I'm gonna be my own wish fulfiller. I could be my own star. What would that look like? Number 2, I could realize the story ain't finished yet. See, every good story has conflict because the pressure turns the coal into the diamonds. I'm only halfway through the book. Number 3, I could just surrender and accept it. As my friend, the late, great Sean Stevenson said shortly before his untimely death, this is happening for me, not to me. Number 4, this is an opportunity for help and support. And by the way, if I want help and support, who can I help and support? Which would thus strengthen the connection, which is the nexus of the human condition of happiness. Number 5, further inquiry into self-discovery. What could this teach me about myself that I otherwise would never know? I call this the 5-to-1 ratio. Every time you have something pop up that you respond to in a limiting way, then later in a safe setting and in a calm mindset, jot down really quickly 5 alternate empowering responses. Then take at least one of those and do a deep visualization on it. For me, I can see myself going in my mind to someone for help. And what would I be wearing when I ask for the help? Who could I ask? What would the tonality sound like? And here's the fun part. It's your imagination. You can ask future you, the specific future you who is wise and has your best interest at heart. Often I ask God, God, help me understand this so I can act in a way that is in harmony with the essence from which you created me in connection to you. Since I'm a Hare Krishna, by the way, I have a very specific imagery of God that I can draw upon when I do this visualization. Okay, maybe that's a little too heady for the YouTubes. The final lesson here, though, is you're programmed to react in ways that prioritize self-preservation. Then you get conditioned to fall into a limiting pattern. To overcome this conditioning, overwhelm it with a greater quantity of empowering alternatives in the right set and with the right setting. Soon then, every one of your limiting beliefs will activate 5 empowering ones. Soon after that, you'll start opening up to alternative choices even under challenging circumstances. Then when thinking about the future, automatically, more of these empowering options will reveal themselves. And what you once couldn't do consciously, with effort, soon you'll be able to do unconsciously, without effort. Where you were limited, you're now empowered. Blind spots now become spotlights. Impossibilities now become probabilities. And even when bad things happen to you, despite your good intentions, they become only distractions, not disasters. So start now. Come up with a limiting thought, run through 5 empowering alternatives, deeply visualize one of those alternatives, then repeat this once a day for the next 30 days. And I promise you, your life will change in wonderful ways that you can't even imagine right now.